Hello and welcome to the third episode of Out of Place But Effective. In this episode, we'll be looking at America's out-of-place vehicles. For first, we have the M6 or T1. Now, as you can see, this one looks a little odd. So the T1, the project for it was first started in May 1940. Previously, there were no other heavy tank projects. As you can tell, from the frontal, we are looking at a 6-man crew. So we've got 3 in the body and 3 in the turret. 2 main cannons. The 3-inch gun that the American M10 used, as well as a 37mm that the Stuart used, as well as several machine guns. This is easier. No, it's not. So we have the 1 penal-mounted machine gun for the commander, and 2 in the body, as well as 2 more that are not used, being here and here, operated by the driver. The M6 is a very interesting vehicle. Well, it did see testing and was a fairly good thing. The main problem that kicked out of it was it was too heavy, as you can tell by its massive size. They had a lot of engine problems and couldn't decide on which engine they wanted to use, because the M6 and the T1 are technically 2 different variants of the same vehicle. The M6 has slower reverse, while the T1 has better, but that's neither here nor there. This would have performed very well against most standard things, but at the ranges you're mostly engaging, this right here is a Panzer I, got a Panzer IV there, and then a Panther back there. Let's put this 76mm gun to use and see what I can do. As you can see, hit the frontal plate, it's going to do nothing. Nothing at this range. Well, it was around 800 meters. This is not going to do anything against the heavily armored vehicles that the Americans were facing. This was something they needed, because prior to 1940, there were no heavy tank designs, and it's one of the big things that the US, they wanted something to do the job. And some tankers wanted this, because a lot of them were ones that had engaged German armor, heavy armor, and failed to do anything. Because the M4, yeah, it was decent, but it lacked the 76mm gun sometimes to do the job. But I'm pulling out of the Peter Chamberlain book, Tanks of the World, 1959-1945. The crew itself, you're looking at a speed of 25 miles per hour. That's pretty good for a heavy tank. You've either got a Walter Whirlwind G200 engine with 925 horsepower. That's pretty good. So you've got the biggest difference between the two is either a hydrodynamic or an automatic transmission. Very weird. It was approved for testing, but never went anywhere beyond it, building 3 different models, being the T1E2, T1E3, E4, and also an E1. There was also at one point one of them that was fitted with a 90mm gun, versus up armored. It still kept the 37mm, but it got a little tight inside. There was also the M6A2E1, because we like giving things weird names, that housed an even larger turret. I can't actually show it to you, even though it is in the game, but it is quite large. Actually, let's see if it is, just to take a look. You've seen what it can do with the M6. I'll show you the 90mm variant. Hello, F-177. Yeah, welcome to loading screens. Sorry. So, it would be over here. Stop showing me things that don't. Ah, here it is. So we're just gonna look at this thing. So as you can tell, that's a big old turret. Instead of housing either a 90 mil or a 76, it houses a 105 millimeter gun. Still, it actually moves down to 5-member crew. We've actually got the ammo rack in the back, as well as these being protected ammo. And it's decent maneuverability and pretty effective. And it was meant to be used. As you can tell, also this frontal area has been locked out, and it lost the 107mm gun. Pulling still from the same book. It was mainly used as testing for another vehicle that'll come up later in the video. But it was never, none of the M6s ever left America or left testing. Next up, we're going to look at something a little different. Look over my notes real quick. Ah, yes. The Sherman with a Big Mac. Nope, I want to look at it, then we can test drive it. So, this is the T-14, or assault tank. This was both commissioned by the Americans and the British. Because to quote the Peter Chamberlain book and Chris Ellis, at a meeting in late March 1942, the British and United States Tank Commission, and an agreement was reached to provide 8,500 of those heavily armored tanks as a requirement for the British government. This vehicle was to use all possible components of the M4 medium tank, with the main armament either a 75mm gun, the same one on a Sherman, or a 6-pounder gun. So this vehicle was meant to be basically easily fixable. They could have pulled parts from other Shermans and other British vehicles and gone from there. It had the same drivetrain, except for a higher top gear. Compared to a Sherman, it sat at around Does this game? I should really. Okay, my book uses pounds, while the game uses tons. Kind of confused me for a minute. I'm used to not seeing 93,930 pounds because that's a lot. I'm used to tons. That's compared to a Sherman. The Shermans are about 68, so it's a big difference in weight. But it's effective, had a max speed of 18 miles per hour. This was mainly meant to be used in Italy, or used against German anti-tank weapons, because, yeah, it doesn't show it that well, but it's fine. As you can see, it's got some skirts, it's very effective. As you probably didn't notice, because I didn't state it, the M6 did lack a stabilizer, but the T-14 does have one. But it was meant to be basically a support unit. They would have used it as an add-on to platoons. So it would have added on to base a 5-tank platoon would have one T-14.
Ready up. Driver ready. Gunner ready. Loader ready.
As you can see, pretty smooth ride, unless it goes up or down heavily. We've got a Panzer IV. I aimed high. I am using totally wrong ammunition, but that's fine. It still houses the same 50 cal. That is an American stable with two 30 cals in the turret and in the body. The reason it was out of place is because it is a heavy tank still. and it didn't fit to what they wanted for these tanks. Because the reason the Sherman is so boxy is because it needed to be shipped quickly. Well, this could fit the bill. It's still much heavier and going to be much harder for them to transport. And so, as you can see, it's got decent crossing ability. It will keep up with the Sherman when working with infantry. For flat ground, it can make shots. But as you can see, it's going to do the job as well as it could, but it was meant to be used as a infantry support vehicle that was supporting infantry and still be able to resist German anti-tank weapon fire like the Panzerfaust and whatnot, while still taking those hits. So next up on our fun little list is 3 vehicles at once that all are slightly different. Starting off, we have, stop giving me things, the where is it? There it is. The T-29. The T-29 is one of the experimental heavy tanks made in September 1944, is when the development project was started. Element of a heavy tank able to meet potential requirements for attacking on fortified positions and heavily armored enemy tanks. So this was the America's counter to basically the King Tiger. As you can tell, this is a massive vehicle with a 6-man crew. You have 2 loaders, a driver, and a machine gunner, and a powerful 105mm gun that is actually the same gun that was on the T6, the M6 A2 E1 that I showed earlier. It was a cast turret, as you can tell if you're looking close. And as you can tell, the commander has a slightly elevated position in the back. Let me remove this so you can get better looking. The models varied depending on what you looked at, where they were doing. It had a V12 Ford engine and weighed at 139 pounds or 64 tons. The other 2 vehicles in this lineup are one modified version being a... Where are you? They must have... here you are. The T-30 being the biggest out of the 3. Still holds the 6 crew, but has 1 less 50 caliber machine gun. The T-29 had 3. But has a truly massive 155mm gun. It was a parallel design, so made at the exact same time. It has separated ammunition and has a power rammer, which is a fancy word for autoloader. Separated ammunition. And it still was authorized for 12 machines, but only two of which were diverted to something else. So, in all, only a few of these were ever made, and none of them saw combat, only testing. But they maneuvered pretty well. Next up, we have their older brother, which I have to find, being the T-34. Now you might be confused. Why is it called the Russian one? Well, that's what we thought. So, as you can tell, the T-34 is the one that they settled on. Housing a 120mm gun, which we have stuck with today, as it's what's on most of our M1s. It uses the chassis of the T-30. It weighed more than both the T-29, only a few pounds over. I say a few, like a thousand's a few, but it's fine. Da, da, da. But these vehicles were weird because, again, they were heavy tanks, and these things are hard to transport. If we ever were gonna use them, we probably would have used them if we ever got attacked on our front in the US. But they were never used simply because they were tested, and we didn't need them. The M26 was doing its job at the time. The 90mm on the M26 could do the job. The other problem was they ran into a lot of mechanical problems. A lot of the times engines would break down simply due to poor maintenance or overuse, and just a few other problems. And it was just something we were rushing because we wanted to try things. We needed something to fill the gap between us and the Russians, because the Russians seem to be doing better. But finally, we have one final little annoyance. And also, none of them had stabilizers, just to let you know. But the final annoyance is this little thing. Meet the M22. The M22 light tank, or the Locust, was made for the British as a glider tank. So it was the first ever airborne tank. This thing is tall, small, fast, and effective, weighing in at only 7 tons, or 16,400 pounds. A crew of 3, 37mm gun, and a machine gun. What made this thing out of place was what it was meant to do. The Americans didn't use gliders during World War II. So this was made for the British. It was made by General Motors. They were pretty much, the British used them in Heimlichar gliders, I think that's pronounced, but it's fine. It's a glider. It's the main glider the British used. Normally it was traded for in place of a Jeep for the British. It was finished in 1942. Well, the project begun in 1942, my apologies. And finished in August 1944, and actually used in some river line crossing operations in March 24th, 1945. I couldn't find any records of this, but this is what I found. But in general, all of these tanks that made them out of place was they were either heavy or meant for something the Americans didn't use. All of the heavy tanks I mentioned were not what we could easily get over to the British. We had to transport it over the seas. It wasn't easy. So we did our things our own way, via building the Sherman the way it was built. Tall and oxy, so it was easily transported. And thank you for being here for this 3rd episode of Out of Place but Effective. So please do. I'll see you next time.